I've only recently started working at a manga publishing house, yet I already hold the position of managing editor of the magazine. I create release schedules for new volumes, negotiate final editing and proofreading deadlines with the printing company, help compile chapters, and send manuscripts to print. Takano appointed me to this position so that I could better understand how the world of manga works. But my colleagues never submit their materials on time. They don't take me seriously and constantly try to deceive me. It threw me completely off balance, and I was genuinely upset. My mood improved significantly when I was handed the first printed copies of the manga I had worked on. I had already said my goodbyes and was about to leave when Takano stopped me. He said I looked like someone who slept on the floor and added that if I stayed over at his place, he would make sure to wake me up on time. I got angry. There he goes again. What if someone had overheard that? I try with all my might to forget the time when we were close, but his touches still burn my skin. I still remember his kisses and his warm hands. After work, of course, I went to a bookstore to see how my manga was selling. That's where I ran into Yokozawa, the head of the sales department and Takano's longtime friend. He dislikes me. As we were parting, he advised me politely but firmly to move out of my apartment since it's located near Takano's. He said it only confuses Takano. I'm tired of explaining that there is nothing between Takano and me, but Yokozawa keeps turning me into an enemy. A suspicion crept into my mind. What if they're together? For some reason, that thought made me unbearably uncomfortable. I shouldn't care, yet my heart inexplicably ached. At work, I accidentally overheard my colleagues talking about how they had seen Yokozawa and Takano at a cafe the day before. Later, Takano approached me and suggested having dinner to celebrate the release of my first manga. Following his advice, I handled the negotiations perfectly. I never could have done it on my own. I took the last train home. Takano was already waiting for me. We drank beer and barely talked. Then, I drank too much, started acting out, and suddenly collapsed into Takano's arms. He seized the moment and began kissing me. I told him he shouldn't do that. After all, he already had Yokozawa. I poured out everything that had been building up inside me, how uncomfortable his behavior made me, especially at work, how I felt like nothing more than a toy to him. I tried to leave, but he wouldn't let me leave. He pinned me to the floor, holding me down so I would listen. He said it mattered to him when I was near, that he wasn't playing with me, that he constantly had to restrain himself, seeing the person he loves both at home and at work. He asked me not to tease him, or he wouldn't be able to stop. Then he started kissing me again, while I begged him to stop. He also said he knew that I loved him too, and that he would keep confessing his love to me again and again. I woke up in Takano's bed. I was naked and couldn't remember anything. Did something happen between us last night? That couldn't have happened to me. I often imagined in my fantasies how Takano and I would celebrate Christmas together, sitting by candlelight, eating pie, and exchanging gifts. Just thinking about it made my heart beat faster and faster. But 10 years later, everything turned out completely different. I was literally burning out at work. The end of the year was always the hardest. Everything had to be checked and finished on time, and all of this while the whole world was enjoying Christmas. Aside from work, I couldn't stop thinking about what had happened that night at Takano's. Every little thing connected to him unsettled me. Even a shiny brush of shoulders as we passed each other in the office corridor. And Takano behaved as if nothing had ever happened between us. When I stepped out of the elevator, an unpleasant encounter awaited me once again. Takano and Yokozawa. They were just saying goodbye. Takano told me I shouldn't have come back to the office. There would be no more tasks for today, and I could go home. That meant we would have to walk to the station together. But Takano suddenly remembered that he had forgotten something in his office and went back. Deep down, I felt unexpectedly relieved. However, Yokozawa, who couldn't stand me, suddenly called out to me. He asked what I was planning to do on Christmas Eve. I was surprised, but it turned out that it was Takano's birthday, something I had completely forgotten. Yokozawa coldly remarked that he wasn't surprised. After all, it was he who had always been there for Takano, supporting him when I left. I went home and went straight to bed. Takano rang my doorbell and sent messages to my phone, but I didn't respond. A few days later, Takano and I were riding the train together. I remembered that his birthday was the day after tomorrow. I knew I had to congratulate him, but I hadn't bought a gift. Since the day after tomorrow was a day off, I decided to wish him a happy birthday in advance. Takano held out his hand and asked where his present was. He was genuinely surprised that I even remembered his birthday. I admitted that Yokozawa had reminded me. Takano said that for his birthday, we would go somewhere together. I replied that I couldn't. I was too busy, but he wouldn't take no for an answer. I wanted to say that if he wanted to celebrate so badly, he should invite Yokozawa, but I stopped myself in time and simply ran away. On the morning of his birthday, Takano woke me up by knocking on my door. He put me in his car and drove me somewhere. I fell asleep. When I woke up, snow was falling outside. It was unbelievably beautiful. Takano said that he wanted to share this beauty with me. He started fooling around as if he were going to style my unruly hair with snow, and then he kissed me. I pulled away and asked him not to do that because he had Yokozawa. Then Takano told me that they had never truly been together, just a few nights back in university, nothing more. He had never loved him. But he had loved me for all those 10 years. It turned out that he too had imagined which cake to buy and what gifts we would exchange. In the end, however, we had drifted apart before Christmas even came. I admitted that I had often thought about it as well. He kissed me again. This time, I didn't resist. I melted into that feeling, dissolving in it and clinging to him desperately. And the next morning, I finally bought him a gift. While ordinary people were celebrating the first day of the new year, a gloomy atmosphere reigned in our publishing house. Valentine's Day was approaching, and all the magazines were preparing special issues. And then my friend Anju called me. I stepped out into the hallway so no one could hear our conversation. She said she was bored and really wanted to see me. I replied that I would love to meet too, but unfortunately I was very busy. Then she declared that if I didn't want her to come to my place in the evening, she would come to my workplace right now. Takano is terribly jealous, so he followed me into the corridor and asked who had called. We didn't have time to talk properly. Our conversation was interrupted by Isaka, the son of the publishing company's owner. He said that he knew my father well and had been playing golf with him for many years. Moreover, they had met on New Year's Day. Then, casually, he added that I was engaged. I had always thought that I had achieved everything at my new job by myself, but it turned out my father had helped even here. After that revelation, I couldn't gather my thoughts during the meeting and looked completely confused. Near the station, Takano caught up with me and handed me a bag of alcohol. He said that when I drink, I become more talkative, and today he needed to ask me a lot of questions. He also advised me not to worry about my father. If I had already decided to build my career independently, I shouldn't stray from that path. He added that I had done really well at today's meeting. Suddenly, the train stopped and the lights went out. Takano immediately took advantage of the moment and kissed me. He wanted to ask about the phone call from that morning, but for some reason changed his mind. Then, he said he wanted me to stay over at his place tonight. On the way, he took my hand. At first, I tried to pull away, but then I wondered, why? When he touches me, my heart starts beating faster. And then, Anju called out to me. She was waiting for me near my building. She handed me a present and asked who he was, pointing at Takano. I said he was my neighbor. Anju thanked him for looking after me. Takano asked if she was my girlfriend. I said no. Anju started protesting, and Takano turned around and walked away in silence. I went to see Anju off, all the while thinking about how I would explain everything to Takano. I brought the mochi my parents had sent me for New Year's Eve. He took them silently and tried to close the door right in front of me. I began to explain that Anju was not my girlfriend, just an old acquaintance, but he reminded me that I had hidden such a small detail as my engagement. Then he said he had to go. He was going to visit a kitten he had once picked up from the street. That meant he was going to Yokozawa. I grabbed Takano by the hand and tried to explain that there really was nothing between Anju and me. It was our parents' decision, and we didn't take it seriously ourselves. We had just been friends since childhood. Takano said that Anju was in love with me and that it was obvious. Otherwise, why would she stand in the cold for so long waiting for me? Then he asked why I was telling him all this in the first place. I simply didn't want him to let go to Yokozawa. Yes, Anju had once confessed her love to me, but I turned her down and said I loved someone else. After that, Takano and I shared a reconciliation kiss. He wanted to know everything about me. There should be no secrets between us. No one else makes my heart beat so fast, but it's so hard to admit it. And in the morning, at work, he was the same as always, a strict and demanding boss. I was running late for work. Today was a special day, the kind when you have to arrive early and wear a suit. Our publishing house was holding a New Year's party, a rare chance for authors, editors, and illustrators to gather together. My phone rang and I stepped out into the hallway to answer it. It was my mom. She scolded me for letting Anju walk home alone the night before. What if my fiancé got offended and broke off the engagement? I told her I never planned to marry her in the first place, but Mom replied that Anju would be attending her friend's wedding today, and it was my duty to meet her and walk her home afterward. What made it worse was that the celebration would be held at the same hotel as our New Year's party. Mom hung up and turned off her phone, so I had no chance to explain that I was at work and wouldn't be able to meet Anju today. Takano came out into the hallway and said he didn't approve of personal calls during work hours. At home, I could chat with my girlfriend as much as I wanted. The party began. When Takano entered the hall with his editors, all the women around blushed and sighed dreamily. Later, a crowd of girls surrounded me instead. They asked me all sorts of questions and invited me to drink with them. I didn't know where to hide, and Takano was in no hurry to rescue me. But eventually, he took pity on me and pulled me away. Yokozawa came over to us. From the very beginning, he had been hostile toward me. He started accusing me of not sending a work plan to the sales department, saying I was just pretending to work and actually doing nothing. Takano stood up for me and said that Yokozawa was being unfair, that I was doing everything I could. I was pleasantly surprised. Takano was even ready to argue with his best friend for my sake. At the end of the evening, I checked my phone. There were dozens of unread messages from Anju. I wanted to call her, but I received a new task, to escort the mangaka to the after party. When I finally got free, Anju found me herself. It was obvious from her face that she was deeply hurt. I explained that I had not been able to reply because of work. It turned out she still believed our engagement was valid because she loved me and didn't want anyone else. I told her I loved her too, but only as a friend. She reminded me that I had been in love with a boy back in school, and since I still hadn't had any serious relationships, maybe I still loved him. But I said I loved someone else. Takano had heard everything and came to my rescue again. Anju was shocked to learn that my neighbor was also my boss. She ran away in tears. I wanted to chase after her, but Takano stopped me. He said it was hard for her to give me up because I was too soft-hearted. While Takano and I were driving home, Mom called again. She scolded me for hurting Anju once more. On the way, Takano asked me who I really loved. I lied and said I only thought about work. I just wanted to get home as quickly as possible, otherwise I wouldn't be able to resist again. But Takano followed me into my apartment and started kissing me, and I couldn't resist anymore. Maybe I really do still love him. Tonight, we slept at my place for the first time. I often remember how I used to search for all the books he had read. They were completely different. Some I liked, others I didn't understand at all. But it made me happy to realize that we were breathing the same air of those dusty library pages. That alone made me incredibly happy. We were riding the elevator together with Takano and Yokozawa. Takano complained that he wasn't feeling well. Yokozawa gently touched his forehead to check if he had a fever. Watching this made me uncomfortable, though I didn't understand why. What business of mine was their relationship anyway? Takano praised me for my good work and said that I should attend meetings with the sales department more often. I didn't really like that idea. It would mean seeing Yokozawa more frequently. That evening, Takano invited me out for dinner. I tried to refuse, saying that I needed to prepare for tomorrow's meeting and that I didn't want to catch anything from him. In response, Takano suddenly pinned me against the wall and asked again who I loved. He still couldn't calm down after overhearing my conversation with my friend the day before. I started making excuses, explaining that I had been forced to lie back then. Then he asked me to look him in the eyes and say that I didn't love him. I replied that I needed time. How could we even be together if we were both men? Takano cut me off with a kiss and then quietly said that I could confess whenever I was ready. He was willing to wait. Later, I thought about it for a long time. If my heart pounds wildly at every touch of his, then I really do love Takano. Maybe I should tell him. But what would happen after I confessed? Even more trouble. I would be fired if anyone found out that I was dating my male boss, and that would mean the end of my career. Or maybe I should still confess so that Takano wouldn't be hurt? The next day, Takano didn't come to work. Yokozawa said he was sick. Everyone was surprised. Before, Takano came in even with a fever. He never missed work because of a simple cold. I didn't understand why we lived so close to each other, and yet he hadn't told me anything. Later, I found out that Yokozawa had also asked to leave after lunch. Why? I didn't know what Takano was sick with, so I decided to buy various medicines. At first, I thought about leaving the bag in his mailbox, but then I realized that would be rude. I needed to ask how he was feeling. But more than anything, I was afraid that Yokozawa would open the door. And that's exactly what happened. When I asked how Takano was doing, Yokozawa started accusing me again. He said I was teasing him with false hope, first rejecting him, then saying, "I'll think about it." He claimed that he suited Takano much better, that he loved him and knew everything about him, that Takano shared everything with him, and that I had no right to love him. He even said that I had transferred to their publishing house just to play with Takano's feelings. I asked why they weren't dating then. After that, I started making nonsense I didn't even believe myself. In the end, losing control, I even said that I hated Takano. At that exact moment, Takano came out to see who had arrived. The next day, I couldn't forget what happened the night before. I didn't know how to explain myself to Takano. What should I say to him? I had run away, he had texted and called me, and I was too ashamed to answer. Maybe it was finally time to tell him the truth, the whole truth about my feelings. I wasn't ready to talk to Takano, so I asked for time off from work. That day, it suddenly started raining. I didn't have an umbrella, so I ducked into the first shelter I saw. To my surprise, Takano was there too, waiting out the rain. When I saw him, I froze. He admitted that he had been looking for me, so he really did want to talk about what happened yesterday. Takano told me that he had spoken to Yokozawa and calmly explained that he wasn't going to date him because he loved me. Then Takano started talking about the past. It turned out that our breakup had coincided with his parents' divorce, which was why he had taken everything so hard. When I started working at the publishing house, Takano didn't recognize me right away. Besides, I had a different last name back then. That was when I had to confess that I'd deliberately written someone else's surname on the spines of the library books so that when Takano wanted to reread them, he wouldn't suspect that I was reading everything after him. Takano got angry because he really had tried to find me using that surname. I apologized for yesterday, for saying that I hated him. Those words slipped out in the heat of the moment after Yokozawa pushed me too far. Takano said that he wanted to be with me not because of the past. The past was behind us. He had fallen in love with who I am now. I had tried to say the same to him, but I couldn't force out a single word. The rain was still falling, and we were standing there kissing. Later, we continued at home without even changing out of our wet clothes. He kept repeating how much he loved me. It felt so good that I just held him even tighter. The next day, I got sick. Maybe I caught a cold in the rain, or maybe I caught it from Takano. In the elevator, I ran into Yokozawa. To my surprise, he praised my work and said that I could always come to him for advice. Then he suddenly asked if I loved Takano. I answered yes. Yokozawa smirked and warned me that if I ever hurt Takano, he wouldn't leave even a wet spot of me. There was a happy event at the company. Employees from the sales and production departments got married. Everyone was invited to the party. From afar, I noticed Takano flirting with a girl, but I quickly calmed myself down. It was just work. Suddenly, Takano cut his ring finger. As usual, I had bandages with me. He asked me to cover the wound. Then he took another bandage and stuck it onto my finger. That was his way of making it clear that the place on my ring finger was already taken for him. In his own style, Takano proposed to me.